He said he was once approached by a missionary, and the missionary said, "Excuse me, sir, what's your relationship with the Bible?" And Rabbi Friedman told him, he said, "Well, Moses was my great uncle. Aaron was my great grandfather." And the missionary's mouth dropped and he just walked away. There are so many different religions in the world, and not all of them can be true. So if all of us are hardwired to be connecting with something greater, to seek out God, we want to know that we're actually involved in the correct religion. But how? How do we do that? Are there any tools that we can use to distinguish what is false from what is true? So first, let's do a thought experiment. Let's step back and let's ask the question, is there a way to distinguish what is likely a false religion from what is a true religion? What kind of components would you need in order to establish a false religion? Let's pretend you yourself want to start a movement. What would you need? The first thing you would need, aside from desire for fame or fortune or whatever it is you would have to have a really good story. You'd have to have some kind of story that would touch people, that would make people question, that would make people inspired, that would offer them some kind of benefit and some kind of change in their life. And you'd have to have a personality that would lead people to believe you, whether it's a very forceful personality, a very cunning personality, or a very charismatic personality. But most importantly, you would have to make sure that the origins of your religion cannot be verified. So you would make sure to keep the real origins, the one that was made up inside of your mind, a secret. You would do that by limiting the real beginnings of the religion to a very small core group of people, either yourself, one or two trusted people, definitely not more than a handful of people. Why? Because the more people who are involved in a lie, the more quickly it unravels. So you want to keep it limited to a very, very small core group who are in on the inner workings of the religion. Now let's look at how religions start in general. If we look at all the religions inside of the world, we see that they all follow a very similar pattern. They have different stories, but they all follow the same pattern. You'll have a human being somewhere, or a very small group of human beings who claim that a divine being spoke to them, revealed information to them. And that information could change people's lives, could guarantee them salvation or some kind of benefit. And only if you join that religion, then you will receive that benefit. And if you don't get the benefit. In Islam, Muhammad's first revelation was through an encounter with the angel Gabriel. In Christianity, Paul was walking on the road to Damascus. He had a blinding revelation. Jesus spoke to him, revealed the grand mystery that only Paul had access to. It wasn't taught to him by any person, revealed a new salvation plan for mankind. You'll have Joseph Smith, who was in the middle of the woods and he encountered the Father God and Jesus God. He received new information. Whatever it is, all religions follow the same pattern. Somebody received a private, personal revelation, giving them new information that is absolutely important for every single person to know, and you can only know it by trusting in one individual or a very small core group of people. That's how religions start. Now, what's fascinating is there's one religion that actually breaks that pattern, and that is the religion of the Jewish people. You see, when the Jewish people left the land of Egypt, there were 600,000 men, plus there were women and children. And in Deuteronomy chapter 4 and 5, we find that the entire nation camped at the foot of Mount Sinai, and everybody heard God speak. Every single person heard God speak. The verse says that God spoke to the Jewish people face to face, the same way it says that he spoke face to Moses. It means we had extremely high prophetic level. We all heard God speak for ourselves in a national revelation. Now, I'm going to throw a wrench in this. If you take this information into the halls of academia, they're going to laugh you out the door. They're going to say, 1 second, how do you know that this is true? And we're going to say, well, we read inside of the Torah. And they're going to say, but who wrote the Torah? And we're going to say, Moses. They're going to say, aha, so you are trusting in private revelation. You are trusting in Moses who wrote the Torah. But here's the thing. Remember we spoke about the different components of what it takes to create a false religion? We spoke about how you have to have personal revelation, a really great story, and you have to make sure that nobody can actually verify the true beginnings. Well, here's the thing. If God gave the Torah, don't you think that he would have given some kind of safeguard, some kind of way to circumvent this academic claim that we're just trusting in Moses? Of course. God doesn't want us to have faith in a private revelation. So what does he tell us? He says in Deuteronomy chapter 32, he says, go fact check. He said, remember the days of old, reflect upon the years of generations. Ask your father and he will tell you, your elders and they will inform you. You see, the Jewish people don't trust the Torah of Moses and the private revelations of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob because it's written inside the Torah. We trust these revelations, we trust the Torah because the entire Jewish people heard God speak and passed that information down in an unbroken chain of transmission throughout the ages, from father to son, from mother to daughter, from Rebbe to student. This is an unbroken train of transmission that can be verified. We have so many people who can actually trace their lineage directly back to Moses, back to Aaron. You know, Rabbi Manis Friedman, one of the rabbis that I'm very close to, he said he was once approached by a missionary, and the missionary said, "Excuse me, sir, what's your relationship with the Bible?" And Rabbi Friedman told him, he said, "Well, Moses was my great uncle. Aaron was my great grandfather." And the missionary's mouth dropped and he just walked away. Because up until that point in time, biblical history was just theoretical. It was an idea inside of his mind. But when you meet somebody who can actually trace their bloodline back to Mount Sinai, it can be shocking. And yet the Jewish people can do exactly that. There's so many people who can trace their bloodline all the way back to Mount Sinai. Moreover, we can trace our teachings all the way back to Mount Sinai. We have an unbroken chain of transmission. Now, there's actually somebody who used to be an atheist and is now a rabbi in Jerusalem. His name is Rabbi Lawrence Kellerman, or Rabbi Leib Kellerman. And he decided he wanted to set out and document just one chain of transmission. So he spent 2.5 years of his life, starting with his own personal rabbi, and he traced that rabbi's rabbi, and that rabbi's rabbi, and that rabbi's rabbi, all the way back to Mount Sinai. And he verified each link in the chain through 4 independent literary sources. He traced back more than 60 generations, going back to Mount Sinai. The teachings passed down, passed down, passed down. No breaks in between, a constant chain of transmission. This constant chain of transmission is so important because we're not relying upon anybody's word. We're relying upon every single line in the Jewish nation saying, yes, my forefathers heard God speak. Why? How do I know? Because I asked my mother, and my mother asked her mother, and her mother asked her mother, going all the way back. You see, the Jewish people don't trust Moses' prophecy because Moses had a personal revelation. We only trust Moses because the entire nation had a national revelation, verified that fact, that God speaks to man and man can still live. And then after we already verified that prophecy exists and that Moses is a true prophet, then we appointed him as an emissary on our behalf to continue hearing God's word. He was established through us, not us through him. It's an incredible difference. So Judaism stands out from all other religions in the world in that we have a national revelation, and every other religion in the entire world began through a personal revelation. And God knew that nobody could ever duplicate a national revelation. Why? Because it would fall apart so quickly. If you get in front of people and you say, you know what, you heard God speak, they're going to say, no, we didn't. Or your grandparents heard God speak. They're going to say, well, let me go ask her. No, they didn't hear it. But God says exactly the opposite. He says, there was a national revelation. Go check. Go check with your granddaddy. Go check with your grandma, you know? Do your own research. Hear this chain of transmission going throughout the ages. And he promises that this national revelation is never going to be again. And this is a very bold promise that if anybody could really duplicate it, then this promise would fall apart. And yet nobody has made this promise, and nobody will make this promise. Moreover, God's promises are found throughout the entire Hebrew Bible, and they're very specific in nature. God called the heavens and earth as witness against us. He said, if you're not behaving as you should, then the heavens are not going to yield their rain, and the earth is not going to yield its produce. People are going to be exiled for the land. And many times he even gives us very specific prophecies, such as you're going to be exiled for 70 years and then returned. And we saw the fulfillment of those. In other religions, you're going to hear vague prophecies, like you're going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. You're not going to hear specifics. You're not going to hear that the nation that was exiled all around the world is going to be returned to the land of Israel and is going to flourish. It's going to be green and alive again. That's something that only the true creator of the world can say. That is something we see only inside of the Tanakh. So at the end of the day, if we look at the credibility factor, every other religion in the world stands on a very shaky foot. You have to trust in the word of one person, 2 people, or a very small core group of people, that they had some kind of divine revelation and they hold the ultimate path for salvation. Or there's Judaism on the other side. There was a national revelation and an unbroken chain of transmission that can be verified, going through more than 60 generations. And you know what? Most people in the world acknowledge that this is true, that the Jewish people received the Torah from God. Moreover, when we look at the prophecies inside of the Bible, we can literally see that God is specific and that he has fulfilled many, many of those promises. And we're living in a very prophetic time right now. We can actually watch prophecies inside of Ezekiel chapter 38 unfolding, and Zechariah chapter 12 unfolding. We can see things coming to life. We can see God's hand working in this world. So people, I want you to know that God desires to be in a relationship with you. He wants you to serve him and only him. And his arms are open and waiting. And it doesn't matter if you're Jewish or you're not Jewish. We're all his children, and he wants to be in a relationship with us. You don't have to be grafted in. Grab hold of the God of Israel, and let's move toward an era in which the knowledge of God is going to cover the earth as the ocean covers the seabed. We're almost there. The true Messiah is right around the corner, and I want to greet him together with all of you. So like, subscribe, and let's keep learning.